I was practically skipping into the kitchen, eager to grab the bag of apples my dad had prepared for my school picnic. On the table lay a sweet little note from him wishing me a fun trip, and I felt a warm wave of gratitude for how thoughtful he was. I picked up a shiny apple, flipped my hair back, and took a huge dramatic bite, but the moment my teeth sank into it, a bitter, decaying squish filled my mouth. I instantly spat it out in disgust, choking back a gag because it tasted like it had been rotting in a dark corner for a decade. Panic set in as I checked the rest of the bag, only to find that every single apple was brown, bruised, and completely inedible. Squeezing my eyes shut and clenching my fists until my knuckles turned white, I screamed at the top of my lungs for my dad. Hey there, I am Dora. Things like this happen to me pretty much every single day. My dad is deeply clumsy and completely colorblind. Two traits that make living with him an absolute wild ride. Ever since my mom passed away, I have had to keep a sharp eye on him like a hawk, because if I look away for even a second, he will inevitably mess something up. I still remember the time he attempted to roast a turkey, only to serve it so raw and cold that it looked like it was about to spring off the platter and sprint around the house. On my last birthday, surrounded by all my friends, he proudly presented me with a pair of winter mittens. The catch? One was a loud eye-searing orange and the other was neon green. I reluctantly pulled them over my hands, feeling like a total clown while everyone in the room burst out laughing. Despite his endless quirks, he is still an extraordinary father in my eyes. He is a crazy talented painter who creates breathtaking artwork, as long as I help him label his paint tubes first. Most importantly, he has always been the biggest cheerleader for my dreams. I will never forget the very first time he took me out onto the frozen lake and guided me across the smooth ice. The crisp, chilly air swept across my face, and right then I knew figure skating was my true calling in life. Even when I slammed hard onto my butt on the freezing ice, he gently pulled me up, brushing off the snow and reminding me that if he could become a successful artist despite being colorblind, a few bumps and bruises certainly should not stop me from becoming a great skater. He is practically a perfect dad, except for one completely bonkers rule. I am strictly forbidden from dating until I turn 18. He even nailed a wooden sign right outside our front door declaring that no men were allowed near our house except for him. Honestly, I did not mind much because boys were the last thing on my mind anyway. The only guy I ever really talked to was my neighbor Ben. One afternoon, Ben waved politely to us before heading inside his house, and my dad watched him with a satisfied grin. He remarked to me that Ben was a good kid who loved drawing, adding that artists were kind-hearted souls just like himself. Then he leaned in and whispered that Ben did not seem interested in girls at all anyway, before grabbing a marker and adding a tiny note to his sign allowing Ben inside. I had to laugh to myself because I was not so sure about his theory. But it was true that Ben and I would never become a romantic item. His soft, overly sweet nature was just not my style at all. However, having him as my best friend was an absolute blast. Looking back at our childhood, Ben always went along with every wild idea I had. He drew a lovely unicorn picture to hang above my bed, gave me his last strawberry ice pop on hot summer days, and joined in on my mischievous games, like ringing our neighbors' doorbells and running away, or wrapping an entire car in toilet paper. Even now, he faithfully escorts me to my figure skating practices several towns over, sitting quietly on the cold bleachers and scribbling away in his sketchbook while I train. For an entire month, I poured every ounce of my energy into practicing for the biggest local competition of the season, determined to bring a medal home. When the day finally arrived, the bright stadium lights washed over the massive ice rink, and hundreds of spectators cheered from the stands. The cold breeze brushed against my skin as I glided effortlessly across the ice, feeling light as a feather and completely immersed in the music. It was time for my grand finale, a tricky single-leg axel jump. I bent my knee, launched myself straight up into the air, and spun around like a cotton ball in the wind. But as I came down, my foot wobbled, my balance snapped, and I fell flat on my face against the hard, slick ice. Sitting in the waiting area afterward, watching the final scores pop up on the giant screen, I saw my name sitting bitterly near the very bottom, ranked 29 out of 30 skater. My heart sank, and I swallowed a lump of disappointment in my throat. Holding my score sheet, I blinked in disbelief. Judge had given me top marks across the board, completely ignoring my fall. Right then, a handsome guy with stylish hair walked up, introducing himself as Luke and complimenting my performance. Checking his name tag, I gasped. He was that judge. With a charming smile, he asked to hang out somewhere special. Breaking Dad's rules meant trouble, but his killer smile won me over, and I said yes. When I excitedly told Ben, he hit me with a sour look, warning that Dad would be furious. I gave him a devious grin, begging him to keep it a secret so Luke could coach me. Reluctantly, Ben nodded. Soon I was on my very first date ever. Luke was sweet and attentive, but things got weird fast. I bit into my mashed potatoes and pulled out a hairpin. Luke beamed, calling it a gift, wiped the potato off on his shirt, and stuck it in my hair. The bizarre gifts kept coming: a ring in my steak, a keychain in my salad, and finally, 2 soggy movie tickets inside my sandwich. I was annoyed, but his puppy dog eyes melted me. He just wanted us to watch a movie together. It was strange, but I felt felt special and giddy. As Luke leaned in for a kiss, I closed my eyes in anticipation. But instead of soft lips, my face pressed against a hard cardboard menu. I opened my eyes to see my dad holding. Luke angrily asked if I knew this crazy old man, and Dad dramatically announced he was my father. Sitting down, Dad casually ate my dessert while sabotaging my date. He dumped black pepper into Luke's coffee, claiming his colorblindness made him mistake it for sugar after Luke spat it everywhere. Then he accidentally poured red wine over Luke's shirt to clean a gravy stain. Luke snapped, shouting that my dad was insane and no one would ever date me, before storming off. I was furious. I yelled at Dad for being controlling, crazy, and ruining my life. Ignoring his apologies, I gathered my savings and moved out to start my own independent life. Living on my own felt amazing at first. I could chat with any guy I wanted and go on as many dates as my schedule allowed. Still, I constantly felt extra eyes watching my every move. During a romantic stroll through the park, my date suddenly paused, asking if I felt like someone was watching us. I gave him an awkward smile, insisting it was just the two of us. He smiled, telling me he had a great time and asking if we could hang out again. But right as he said it, a hand reached out from a nearby bush, grabbing his leg and pulling hard. My date stumbled back, shaking his leg in annoyance and asking what on earth was going on. If my dad thought sneaking around in bushes was going to stop me, he was dead wrong. It actually pushed me to date even more guys, even if I did not particularly like them that much. It felt nice being showered with affection, and my new room quickly filled up with flowers and presents. After practice at the rink one afternoon, I excitedly shared all my dating adventures with Ben, but instead of laughing along, he just frowned, asking if I was trying to speed date the whole town. I rolled my eyes, explaining that it was just harmless dating and not like I had agreed to be anyone's girlfriend. Ben grew defensive, warning that I did not even know these guys or their true intention. Annoyed, I asked why he sounded just like my dad, telling him he did not need to give me rides or come to practice anymore since my dates could take me. Ben looked deeply hurt, softly apologizing and claiming he was probably just overthinking things. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. Ben was still Ben, the one reliable person I could always count on. Still, being a serial dater quickly turned into chaos. I kept confusing Gregory's hobbies with Ivan's, and I accidentally retold Anton the same funny joke for the third time. I showed up late for my date with Hector because my earlier hangout with Ryan ran over, and one evening, completely exhausted, I literally face-planted into my food during dinner with Christian. I stumbled back to my apartment, where Ben was waiting outside to check on. He smiled softly, noticing how exhausted I looked. I groaned, admitting that dating was fun initially, but now I had zero rest and could barely tell the guys apart anymore. Seeing him grin, I asked what was so funny. Ben blushed, trying to hide his smile as he murmured that it was just nice not having to share me with an entire alphabet of guys. I teased him back, laughingly telling him he was the only letter B in my life, which made his face turn bright red. The very next day at the school gate, an angry crowd of guys surrounded me, loudly accusing me of cheating on them. Panicking, I shouted back that I was never officially anyone's girlfriend, so it was not cheating, and as a single girl, I could go on as many dates as I want. My outburst only made them angrier, and they began shouting all at once. Suddenly, a cop marched over, telling the boys to back off because he had just finished a karate course and would give them a piece of his mind. He threw a few silly, clumsy kicks in the air and awkwardly fell over. I squinted. It was my dad in a fake uniform. The guys shook their heads in utter disbelief, calling us a bunch of weirdos before walking away. I felt relieved he saved me, but embarrassed that he saw me in such a chaotic mess. My shame instantly turned into anger. I huffed out, asking who asked him to show up and make a scene, telling him to stop bugging me because I could handle my own life. When I got back to my apartment, Ben was sitting on the doorstep waiting for me. Overwhelmed by the day's madness, I burst into tears. He pulled me into a gentle hug, and I immediately felt safe in his arms. But then he quietly asked me to stop playing these games and just go back home to my dad. Feeling betrayed, I furiously pushed him away, asking if he thought my life was just a game. I raised my voice, telling him I deserved to live how I wanted, and calling him too much of a coward to ever understand. The moment the words left my mouth, regret washed over me. Ben looked deeply hurt. He simply shook his head in silence and walked away, leaving me standing alone in shock. I honestly thought he was the one person who would never abandon me, but wiping my eyes, I put on a determined face. I did not need him or my dad. I was going to prove I was mature enough for independence by finding someone way better than Ben, and I did. Soon after, I met Mark, a super strong macho guy who made sure everyone knew he was my boyfriend. One day near the hallway, Mark suddenly put on a serious face, telling me to look out and let him handle it. He shoved me out of the way and slammed his bare fist straight into the wall with a loud bang. I leaned in, squinting my eyes only to see a tiny squished mosquito stuck to the wall. I clapped my hands with sparkling eyes, thanking him sweetly for saving me as he proudly blew on his knuckle. One afternoon, while Mark and I were strolling through the school garden, I spotted Ben quietly drawing inside the wooden gazebo. Wanting to show off, I put on a cute damsel in distress look, tilting my head back and telling Mark softly that I felt so tired I might pass out. Mark panicked, promising to take me to the hospital, and suddenly hauled me right over his shoulder like a sack of potato. My head spun wildly, making me feel genuinely faint. I pleaded with him to set me down so I could sit on a low wall. I flipped my hair, glancing over to see Ben frowning at me, feeling secretly pleased that he was bothered by seeing me move on. Suddenly, a girl walked up to Ben, staring at his sketchbook with intense admiration before asking if he could draw her portrait. To my shock, Ben cheerfully agreed, even flashing me a playful, smug look. Unable to watch any more of that ridiculous display, I grabbed Mark's hand and pulled him away. Yet that night, I kept tossing and turning, unable to get the image of Ben and that girl out of my head. Shaking my head, I tried to convince myself it was no big deal, and that they were just irritated. The next day, I arrived at the ice rink entrance arm in arm with Mark, determined to refocus on my figure skating dream. While Mark went off to grab us some drinks, my first date disaster Luke strolled up with a rude smirk. He taunted me about still skating, telling me to give up and revealing that he had only given me high scores so I would date him. I was gobsmacked, shouting back that my dad was right about him being a jerk. Furious, Luke threatened to use his influence to have the rink manager ban me for good. As I stood there speechless, Ben suddenly appeared, calmly warning Luke that the committee would not appreciate hearing about his fake scoring, adding that one email could cost him his position on the judging panel. Surprised and flustered, Luke stormed off. Mark returned a moment later, telling me that skating sucked and urging me to quit so we could go jump on trampolines instead. But Ben stepped in, gently telling me to go practice because no one would dare ban me now. Mark flared up, grabbing Ben's collar and asking who he was. Annoyed, I yelled at Mark to stop, claiming Ben was just an acquaintance. Ben gave me a worried look, telling me to watch myself around Mark. I brushed him off, telling him it was none of his business before dragging Mark away, though Mark turned back to stick out his tongue at Ben. The following day at school, I froze in my tracks when I saw Ben sitting with that same girl again. A deep pang of sadness hit my heart, and I realized how much I truly missed having him around. Mark noticed my distracted gaze, asking angrily why I was staring at the guy from the rink. He lunged toward Ben, but when I tried to pull him back, Mark dragged me into a quiet corner instead. Gripping my wrist tightly, he aggressively reminded me that I was his girl. Looking at his terrifying expression, fear-paralyzed Methus was not the protective boyfriend I thought he was. When he leaned in for a kiss, I instinctively blocked his face with my hand. Mark lost his temper, shouting at me for daring to refuse him. I closed my eyes in terror, preparing for the worst. Suddenly, Ben's voice rang out, mockingly calling Mark out for terrorizing his own girlfriend. I opened my eyes in shock. Mark roared at Ben, grabbing a heavy clay flower pot and charging at him. Panicking, I shoved Mark, making him stumble clumsily. Before Mark could recover, Ben stepped up and landed a solid punch right across his face. Mark held his bruised lip, stammering in shock. But when Ben asked if he wanted another hit, Mark scrambled away in defeat. I stared at Ben, completely amazed by his fierce, protective side. Looking at me gently, Ben suggested it was time for me to go home, asking if I had ever truly wondered why my dad had acted the way he did. I stammered, unable to find the words before he quietly walked away. He was right. After everything that had happened, I finally realized how much I missed my dad and wondered how he was doing without me. I arrived back home to find my dad sitting all alone, dozing off on his chair in the middle of a total mess. He was wearing stained, unwashed clothes, and sitting on the wooden easel beside him was an unfinished painting of me, though painted in all the wrong colors because of his colorblindness. Seeing him like that broke my heart. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I ran straight over to wrap my arms around him in a tight hug. Sobbing into his shoulder, I apologized for running away, admitting that I thought I could handle being on my own, but I was wrong and missed him terribly. My dad woke up in surprise, his face lighting up as he hugged me back, telling me how much he missed me too. I felt awful for putting him through so much worry. Once I calmed down, we sat together and talked through everything. He softly explained how hard it was for him, reminding me that I was all he had left, and that he was just terrified I was too young to make the right choices, and could not bear seeing foolish guys hurt me. I looked at him, gently explaining that I needed real-life experiences to learn and grow, asking if he could support me from now on. He smiled, reassuring me that he would always support me, adding that his only wish was for me to find a kind person who truly understood, stayed by my side, and made me genuinely happy. Hearing those words, a realization washed over me. All those traits described one specific person. I had spent so much time chasing after silly, trivial things out there, completely forgetting the one guy who had been standing by my side all along. I immediately went out to find Ben, spotting him lying on the green lawn near our house, listening to music through his headphones. I walked up and greeted him. He took off his headphones, looking up at me with a quiet greeting. I smiled, telling him he would be glad to hear that I had officially moved back home with my dad. He gave a gentle nod, saying that was really good news. Hesitating slightly and looking down at my feet, I apologized sincerely for being such an idiot, admitting that I took him for granted and felt terrible about it. Gazing up at him, I timidly asked if he would still take me to my figure skating practice tomorrow. Put on a pouting, sulky tone, he replied that he would have to think about it. I grinned, teasing him that I never expected him to stand up to a tough guy like Mark, asking if he was not just a timid artistic type after all. Ben chuckled softly, asking who said he was timid, explaining that he only acted gentle around me because it made me happy, but in reality, he was fully capable of taking care of himself, and especially taking care of me. We both looked at each other, sharing a warm, quiet smile.